Steven thought that growing up and taking on more responsibility would make him feel like he was truly part of something, like he was finally in control. Instead, he ended up feeling more disconnected than ever. Steven Universe starts as a colorful adventure about gyms, magic, and family, but it has something much deeper. What happens when the person who's always holding everyone else together starts to break and no one knows how to put him back? That question becomes all too real when Steven's life is torn between two worlds. On one side, there's the crystal gems, his family, his protectors, the ones who have taught him to be brave and kind, who are always by his side even when they don't fully understand him. On the other, there's Steven, the kid who spent so long trying to fix everyone else that he's forgotten how to fix himself. Who's strong enough to catch him when he falls? In this video, we're going to talk about Steven Universe and how Steven's struggle to juggle responsibility with taking care of himself shows what happens when you're always putting everyone else first. Just a quick reminder to subscribe to our channel. Now let's get back to Steven. To understand why Steven falls apart and everything's fine, we have to go back to Homeworld Bound. That's when it all started crumbling. Steven thought he could find answers with the diamonds, but he couldn't fix himself. The diamonds couldn't help, nobody could. That's what broke him. For once, Steven was completely alone in his mess. All his life, he believed if he just kept helping others, he'd stay good. But now he's not helping anyone. He's lost, he's angry, and that's the scariest part. He's dangerous. He tried to hide it from everyone because he thought if they saw how messed up he was, they'd never look at him the same. But the truth exploded out of him. He almost crushed White Diamond in rage, and he actually shattered Jasper during training. These were violent acts from someone who was supposed to be the gentle, caring protector. That's what destroyed Steven inside. He was scared of what he might do next. All that fear made it all the harder to admit he needed help, and he couldn't blame anyone else. He was the one losing control. He was the one who might hurt the people he loved most. It's the one thing he'd never thought he'd become, a monster. The worst part? It was about Steven finally seeing himself for who he really was. Not the sweet, perfect kid, but someone who could do real damage. That truth was more than he could handle. So he faked a smile. He tried to act like nothing was wrong. But deep down, he knew. Steven Universe, the kid who always has the answers, was gone, and maybe there's no coming back from that. Everything's Fine starts right after everything's gone wrong, and it's clear Steven's not okay. He shows up at home, still glowing pink and shaking from what just happened, but he puts on a show of being fine. But every smile feels like it's hiding something deeper. Connie calls him and doesn't sugarcoat it. She wants to know what's going on, what's really happening with him. It's the first real moment where someone isn't fooled by his fake smile. When she asks how he's feeling, he knows she sees right through him. He's scared because if Connie knows he's not fine, maybe everyone else will figure it out too. He tries to laugh it off, like everything's perfect, but his voice is shaky, and it's obvious he's faking it. He's scared that if she sees how messed up he is, she'll leave him, and if she leaves, he'll be alone with everything he's done. Then the TV flicks on and shows him everything he's been trying to forget, yelling at his dad, shattering Jasper, almost killing White Diamond. He can't handle it, so he tries to convince himself it's not real, that he's still the Steven who always saved the day, that nothing really changed, but deep down, he knows it's real. He just can't stand the idea that he's turned into the kind of person he's always hated, so he keeps lying to himself instead of facing it. This is his way of holding on to the idea that he's still one of the ones who fixes everything. Steven always has been the hero, the one who helps. Now that he's messed up so badly, he needs to prove he's still that person. Instead of dealing with the fact that he's become violent and lost control, he finds a new job. He's going to help everyone at Little Home School. It sounds good because that's what Steven's always done, helping people. But it's really a way to run from the truth. The trip to Little Home School shows just how far Steven will go to keep lying to himself. Everyone else can see it's a disaster waiting to happen. Peridot warns him about his history with plants. Amethyst sees him talking to himself and asks if he's okay. But Steven won't hear it because if he admits there's something wrong, it means he's dangerous. And that thought terrifies him. Then he tries to heal Peridot's dying plants by licking his finger, and everything goes out of control. The plants don't just grow a little, they explode, turning into dozens of Steven clones. The plant clones are a messed up reflection of Steven's need to be needed, taking every good intention and turning it into chaos. This is where you see how desperate Steven's gotten. He's so terrified of not being needed that he ends up creating a nightmare. The real Steven would never force himself on people like this, but this Steven doesn't care. He's so obsessed with being the hero that he can't see he's turning into the villain. His need to be important has created a monster, and he's too scared to face that. So he keeps pushing, even as everything he touches falls apart. Then comes the most messed up part of the episode. Steven totally loses touch with reality. He sees all this chaos as proof he's actually helping. He breaks Bismuth's anvils and calls it making two anvils. He destroys the courtyard at Little little homeschool and says it's just a part of fixing things. He's twisting everything into a story where he's still the hero, even when he's clearly not. The little plant Stevens are his brain's way of making a fake world where helping always works and never hurts anyone. They're his desperate lie that if he tries hard enough, he can't do any real damage. But even inside this lie, he knows it's not right. Every time he sees the destruction he's caused, he tries to fix it by making more plant Stevens. It's an endless cycle of hurting and trying to clean it up. He's stuck. This fake world he's created takes over completely. It pushes him right back to reality, slamming him with the truth that he's been hiding from. When he gets home and sees his family waiting, it's like he's been thrown into the deepest hole. He's at rock bottom, and there's nowhere else to hide. He sees Connie's phone with a glitchy message, like his own mind is screaming out for help. But even then, he doesn't stop lying to himself. He clings to the idea that he's fine, even though everything around him says otherwise. His family finally calls out to him. They're standing there, worried and caring, exactly what he needs. But instead of accepting it, Steven realized something he's been scared to admit. He's not the hero anymore. He's the one who might hurt them. He's the one they should be scared of. This is what breaks him. The person who's always supposed to protect everyone is now the person they need protecting from. It's not just a meltdown, it's Steven seeing that the one person who can't be trusted anymore is himself. He can't face it, so he keeps pretending everything's fine, even when he knows it's not. Watching his family's faces when he admits he's shattered Jasper, Steven finally sees something that's been creeping up on him. They're scared of him now. That hits Steven harder than anything else. It's the moment he knows he's crossed a line, but instead of crushing him, it actually sets him free. If they can see what he really is, maybe he doesn't have to keep faking it. The truth starts pouring out because Steven finally gets that being a hero wasn't about saving everyone else. It was about hiding from himself. He didn't want to admit that he was capable of hurting people. He didn't want to admit that the Steven universe everyone loved could also be a real threat. Telling the truth is about finally dropping the act. When he calls himself a fraud and a monster, his family sees what's really going on. This wasn't some random meltdown because of stress or bad news. Steven's falling apart because he built his whole life around being the perfect kid who saves the day. And now he knows he's not that person. He's someone who can lose control and hurt the people he cares about. What's so powerful about Everything's Fine is that it shows how real breakdowns look. They're not loud or attention-grabbing, they're quiet. They're full of fake smiles and empty reassurances. Steven doesn't blow up at everyone, he just stops being himself. He keeps making up excuses and finding new ways to help so he doesn't have to look at the real problem. The trip to Little Homeschool is a perfect example. It's a total mess. It doesn't help anyone. But to Steven, it feels like proof he's still worth something. It's not logical, but it's exactly what people do when they're desperate to believe they're still needed. In the end, it's not about saving the world. It's about Steven clinging to the last scraps of the person he wishes he still was, even if he was to hurt everyone around him to do it. It also shows how being alone just makes everything worse. When Steven starts broadcasting his panic through the TV, when he's talking to himself, when he creates a bunch of plant clones, he's shutting out the people who actually could help him. That's when he starts to lose it completely. The episode doesn't spell it out, but it's clear. Steven is so scared of people seeing him as dangerous that he pushes away the people who could help him deal with it. And that's what turns him into a real danger. Reaching that low point was the first time Steven could see just how far he'd fallen and what it would take to climb back out. When Steven admits he's a fraud and a monster, that's actually the start of getting better. It's the first time he stops lying to himself. He's not magically okay. He literally turns into a huge monster right after. But it's the first step. He's done hiding from the truth and ready to actually face it. The seeds of Steven's mess go way back. In the new Crystal Gems, he leaves town in Connie, Lapis, and Peridot's hands. They mess it up, but he's proud of how they tried. It's a hint of what's been going on with Steven for years. He thinks he has to handle everything himself. And when something goes wrong, he takes it as a sign that he's not doing enough. That fear of not being essential keeps him from letting anyone else help, and it makes him more alone. This breakdown is about how perfectionism destroys you. Every time he tried to be the perfect helper, he just buried the parts of himself he didn't like. He wouldn't admit he had violent thoughts, and that led to real violence. He wouldn't deal with the part of him that could hurt people, so he convinced himself it wasn't real, but it was. And the harder he worked to hide it, the bigger it grew. Steven's story is messy and brutal, but it's also real. It shows how someone can be so obsessed with being good that they become dangerous, and how telling the truth, even when it's ugly, is the only way to stop the cycle before it completely takes over you. Being alone just made everything worse. Steven's lowest point was when he stopped talking to real people and started talking to himself and making up helpers in his head. When he stopped listening to what others thought and only listened to himself, he lost his sense of what was real. Trying to deal with this kind of pain alone always makes it worse, especially if you're scared that letting people see the real you will just make them run away. Hitting rock bottom isn't always the end. It could be a wake-up call. When Steven turned into a giant monster, it was horrifying, but it was also what he needed to finally see how far he'd fallen fallen. Sometimes people have to become the thing they're most afraid of before they can admit there's a problem. Steven's monster form forced everyone to stop pretending. No more faking, no more lies. It was all out in the open. But getting better isn't instant. Steven saying he was a fraud and a monster was a huge moment. But it didn't fix everything. He still had to deal with what he had done. He had to learn to see the part of him that could hurt people without letting it take over. He had to figure out how to live without pretending to be perfect all the time. That kind of change doesn't happen in one moment. It takes work every day. But it is possible. Steven's story in Steven Universe Future shows that people can change. He went from denying he had a dark side to being able to say, yeah, I've got these feelings and they scare me, but I'm not going to pretend they're not there. He learned how to ask for help instead of hiding. He learned that people who really care about you won't leave just because you're struggling. Real love can survive even the ugliest truths if you're willing to be honest. That's how you start to grow. Everything's Fine hits hard because it doesn't sugarcoat what a real meltdown looks like. It doesn't make Steven's breakdown into some dramatic scene for the audience to eat up. It shows how someone can get stuck in quiet panic when everything they've used to feel okay stops working. It shows how being so scared of looking dangerous can actually make someone more dangerous because it keeps them from getting help. The episode doesn't have a happy fix either. Steven doesn't snap out of it because of some wise words or magic trick. When he sees how scared the people he loves are, when he finally stops trying to do it all alone. That's a lot closer to what really happens when someone hits rock bottom. What's wild is that this isn't a show full of aliens and magic, but the heart of it is so real. Steven's got all these powers and a family that loves him, but he still breaks under the weight of who he thinks he has to be. His meltdown is what happens when your whole identity is built on lies you can't keep up anymore. The episode also says something about family that's not usually shown. Steven's family doesn't magically fix him, and their love doesn't stop him from hitting his lowest point, but they're still there. They watch him fall apart. They hear the worst of what he's done, and when he's finally ready to start facing it, they're still there. That kind of support is what can actually help someone come back from the edge, by staying even when the truth is hard to hear. Everything's Fine doesn't give easy answers or pretend everything can be fixed fast. It shows how someone can feel like they're saving everyone while really destroying themselves, and how real love is about staying through the worst of it. Steven Universe was always about growing and healing, but Everything's Fine shows how ugly and messy that can get when the person who needs help is the person everyone's leaned on for so long. Steven's family learns that the hard way, that supporting someone doesn't mean pretending they're not a threat. It means helping them learn how to handle that threat without destroying themselves or everyone around them. What Everything's Fine really says is that breaking down is just as human as healing. Everyone hits moments when who they thought they were just doesn't work anymore, when they realize they can hurt people in ways they never imagined. That's terrifying, but it's also a chance to finally see the truth about yourself. The key is to let people in, people who can handle the truth, even when it's ugly, and to do the work to rebuild piece by piece. That's something worth remembering. Whether you're a half-human, half-alien boy, or just a person who's trying to figure out how to live with the parts of yourself you don't like, sometimes the biggest step forward is about stopping the lies, seeing yourself clearly, and deciding you're ready to learn how to live with the real you, the good and the bad. That's how real healing starts. If you enjoyed our video, then please subscribe to our channel.